I just wanted to take a moment to be here with my emotions, with my heart pounding, and to realize I've now given myself a chance to do something I rarely did in my life, which is feel my emotions and be okay with them and not necessarily go into them and continue to generate more stories and thoughts that only increase those emotions. For this is, most of my life, one of my greatest fears, standing in front of people, being myself. And I also wanted to give myself a chance to realize the power of allowing myself to improvise. Because while this has been, a few times that I've come on this stage to share in order to learn how to serve and heal myself and make my world better, this time I didn't prepare very much, because I'm learning now that life is a process of improvisation. It is a journey of making mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes and we're going to continue to do so. But I'm giving myself a chance to be okay with allowing myself to come from the source that's within, rather than what I learned with my mind and about information. Now, the topic is mental health, mental illness. It's something I am very familiar with. It's something I grew up with. Growing up with a mom that's only last year, and her expressing just how difficult it was for her raising me in the country that I'm from. Having learned to go from a rural, small town to becoming a doctor and moving to the big city, she could barely hold it together and prevent herself from thinking about killing herself when I was small. I still don't know the impact that had on me as a very highly sensitive person. And then immigrating to Canada and trying to fit in through school, looking back, it was incredibly difficult. All I wanted to do was be in, loving connections, beautiful, harmonious, joyful, fun relationships with my fellow peers, right? Men and women. But as I started to try to be like others and started going through the process of socialization through both school and learning from my peers and trying to be like everyone else, that started to cause me a lot of internal pain, because I was trying to be like everyone else and I was trying to become something acceptable to all sorts of people. And that caused me not to know myself. And especially got intense in junior high and then high school. It was so intense. As I started trying to hang out with different kinds of people, there's so many kinds of people, and it was really painful when, for example, when one kind of people group found out I was hanging out or doing things with another group, they would talk about me behind my back and shun me. And then this other group will call me a tryhard for doing these things. So that caused me so much distress. I just didn't know why I was doing it, and I wanted to give up. I thought, if this is what the world is, what society is, I don't know how to be that. I don't know how to be all these things to all these people. Because yes, I was highly addicted to seeking validation from outside of myself. Never knowing how to, the point of life was actually learning how to love myself and how to just be. How to be okay with just being. Because I am, it is what it is. Because it's really, also what I've learned is life is very much a process instead of these finite, solid things. It's really verbs. I'm a verb rather than a noun. I'm Danieling. I'm ising. I'm talking. So it's only through understanding this slowly that has allowed me now to recognize more and more why I chose to go through what I have. Some of the most painful years of my life was, not having been able to graduate high school along with my peers because the emotional pain was so challenging. My anxiety, my depression, being labeled by the Western medical system that with social phobia and depression, I made that part of my identity. And of course, being socially anxious, I once again delve into my emotions and made them so real that generated so much storyline. I was just like nerve-wracked every day going to school. So of course couldn't handle it and I had to drop out. And of course, being from the culture that I'm from, that just created so much negative concepts about myself, that created so much shame and so much guilt, that energy just paralyzed me. And not having been able to graduate high school properly and go to post-secondary like a proper mainland Chinese immigrant, I thought I was just completely worthless. And just trying to struggle and just survive, because really that's what I learned from my parents, is survival. It was purely that, what I witnessed in both of them. So I realized I started manifesting these expressions of what we know as mental illness, like intense, debilitating social anxiety and bulimia. I remember those days of just working jobs at fast food places and at dead-end retail jobs, my point of view of those jobs. It was so painful that I never gave I just thought that was my future. I literally thought that eventually I would become most likely homeless just because of how emotionally sensitive I am. How I didn't know how to try not to be kind to others, and that was very painful because I was going about it in a codependent, people-pleasing way. And I was so scared of the world, so scared of being rejected in any way. And I would literally, I had so much self-consciousness, I was so addicted to self-consciousness that the only joy and good feelings I had was, frankly, like drugs that are legal, sugar, alcohol. So I would literally, just try to get through the week, and then, and then Friday evening I would just go to the supermarket, because by that time I was all on my own. I couldn't even remain friends with the group I had throughout high school because I was so ashamed of myself, because they were all going to post-secondary and had regular girlfriends and friends, and here I am just all on my own, living in a windowless basement room, living with people that also has similar energy, because like attract like. And I was in so much pain and despair and hopelessness. That's all I had, that takeout food, the fast food, and that tub of ice cream that I can just slowly consume and just feed my pain at Friday night. And then, of course, the next morning I would feel so disgusted with myself. That pattern continued for a couple of years, and I even incurred intense experiences of agoraphobia. I would literally be afraid of even going outside of my room within that house. And I would wait till like 10:30 p.m. to go grocery shopping because I literally couldn't stand people looking at me because I was so disgusted with myself. Like, thinking back, I'm actually proud of my past. I'm proud that I went through that and still did my best to try to not hurt others. Because really, even at my jobs, I did my best not to be a negative force. But being disgusted with myself, I couldn't even keep those menial minimum wage jobs. And boy, did that add more piles of shame. But looking back, I realize how grateful I am, because that gave me time. And slowly but surely, due to my impoverishment, frankly, I started buying fruits. That was because it was cheaper than takeout. And that started getting me curious about vegetables. And I started learning about that. And then I started learning from self-empowerment, self-development. And slowly, I started to change the way I thought. I started to relate differently to my mind. And I started opening these windows of, well, I mean, it was certainly better than just despair or hopelessness. And, one step at a time, 1 year at a time, being on my own, I started to change my energy and change my relationship with my mind, with my thoughts. But that is one thing I really want to express is part of how I got there was I was all alone. Yes, I had friends in junior high and high school, but I sure as hell didn't know how to be myself, didn't know how to have authentic intimacy with them, because that was not modeled to me by my parents. I don't remember a single act of kindness between my parents. They divorced when I was 10, and I remember witnessing traumatic exchanges between them and the way they treated themselves. So I realized I was mimicking that in my own way. So that helps me understand why the world today, why there's such a steep increase in depression, in suicide, especially amongst men. Because I myself as a man, I certainly believed in the whole script of masculinity. Be strong, don't be weak. And I felt so weak because all I wanted to do was be, well, kind and loving, but I didn't know how to do it authentically. So that's what really, in part, really brought me to the depth of that suffering. But once again, that suffering took me to a place where I started isolating and I started spending time with myself. And I was willing to start learning how to develop a different relationship with myself, with life, with energy. And so as I continued through my 20s, the more I was able, and time really does heal, and as time passed and I started to change my choices, I felt differently. And I really started to change. And then by the end of my 20s, I started exploring another layer of consciousness, started seeing things differently. And I started exploring and researching spirituality and consciousness. That gave me another layer of hope, of realization of what this all is. And explorations through that brought me to meet new people that allow me to experience support in a different way in my life. Through that support, through those new relationships, that new way of life, I was inspired to move to BC. And I started thinking myself as a spiritual person, here to share spirituality with others, and learning about the concepts of oneness, and entanglement, and God is within the self, right? All religions are same. I started putting all my faith into spirituality and the fact that these notions that we are made of love and compassion, and I was doing my best to follow that. And for the last 5 years, moving to this different part of the world, and it's so interesting how different the quality of energy, of people, of relationships, of consciousness is from one part of the world to another. I had no idea, living in the city I grew up in Calgary, how different it could be in another part of the world. But the past 5 years has given me another layer because I've realized by putting all my hope in concepts, in words, in systems, even though they're spiritual systems, even though they may be different than the ones I grew up with, that has also challenged me and brought me to more suffering because that was also outside of myself. I was putting my faith in angels and guides and divine source, and I didn't know how to connect to myself. So I was trying to people please in a way that I was trying to be spiritual so I can help others realize the power of being kind and compassionate to self and learning to eat better foods and exercise and yoga, meditation, which are all amazing tools. But I realized they weren't sustainable for me. And so I realized there's another layer I experienced through that. And I'm grateful for having experienced that because there are many gifts that I received through the explorations and my willingness to learn and develop in all these different ways. But now I'm realizing as I've hit a lot of dead ends and actually incurred new traumas in spirituality because I thought spiritual people were supposed to be good. They weren't going to hurt me, but that hasn't necessarily been the case. So that really challenged me. That pulled the rug under the floor I was trying to create with this new metaphysical concept of what life is. But I'm so glad, once again, that rug was pulled out and I was left once again. What is this? How do I love myself? And with the help and then luckily I was able to meet more people that gave me more insights about what this all is. And I realized I was people-pleasing in a different way, in a spiritual way, and that was not working either, because once again, I was trying to give it out so I can get it back, and that's not really how it goes. I'm starting to understand that now. So I'm now realizing that I don't have to take my emotions so serious. I mean, I don't have to identify with my emotions. I am not my emotions. I am not these concepts, that even the ones I've learned. I just am. And I'm learning now to create a space between what I'm feeling and what the thoughts that are around in my mind, so that I can recognize what is feeling true to me, and therefore I have a choice to interact, to connect with them in a different way. And that space then has helped me to realize that now the opportunity is really connect with myself, really learning what it means to be my own light. And through that, I am now having another sense that there's a freedom now, that I don't have to rely on anything outside of myself. All I can now need to do is be willing to be with myself, be aware of myself, and be willing to, connect with myself. And through that, I know life is going to be different, right? Because I'm already feeling that. But I do want to share some of the things I went through to give others out there hope. Because really, I'm a millennial, I'm a dude, I'm a guy. I love all things that all millennial men, young men have loved. I loved it all, and I still love it all. Everything that has beautified my experience, I so appreciate. So I'm gonna just now move forward and choose to enjoy what I enjoy, and choose to have that space and not let myself go deep into my emotions, needed to feel and wade through and create all these stuff that just piles on. I can just make peace and create that space, and through that space, I know I'm gonna be able to connect with myself. And through that space, more will come in. Because like attract like, and as I learn to really be there for myself, I know I'm gonna bring more of that energy into my experience. Thank you.